What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Blossoming Mama podcast. I realize that I don't ever introduce myself, so I'm going to do that today. My name is Destynie. Hello, welcome. So we are in the middle of a series, which I'm calling Mom 101, and it's basically a training for all those future mamas out there that want to best prepare themselves for birth and pregnancy and motherhood. And so in the last couple of weeks, we've been in the pregnancy phase. So preparing your body to try and start getting pregnant, and then the actual act of trying to conceive. This week, I'm going to actually bring a old episode in because I've already kind of talked about when you find out you're pregnant and what happens next. So instead of trying to recreate the wheel, I'm just going to play that old episode in this episode. And hopefully it's helpful to someone out there. Before we get into that episode, I just wanted to let y'all know that I'm so excited because we have our very first guest coming on the show next week. She's a doula. She owns her own business. She is wonderful, and she is very familiar with everything related to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, mothering, breastfeeding, all of those things. And so I'm so excited to pick her brain and get some really good information out there for you all. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. Don't miss next week's episode because it's definitely going to be amazing. And with that being said, let's get into the episode. There are so many unknowns when it comes to new motherhood. I remember when I was pregnant with my first baby and I saw that second line appear on the pregnancy test. And there were so many mixed emotions, so many questions like, what do I do now? Who do I tell? What's my husband going to say? What the heck is going to happen to my body? I remember that day started off with just one big question, which was, am I pregnant? And it had one big answer, which was yes. But with that really big answer came 1,000 more questions. I know this sounds ridiculous, but just as soon as the excitement kind of came in, the anxiety for me skyrocketed. I felt like I was so unprepared for this journey. Now, I will say just automatically that in hindsight, there truly is nothing that can fully prepare you for motherhood. There is just so much, I guess, like on the job training that you get from having your own child and then learning that specific child and then figuring out who you are as a mother. But I do feel like there is plenty of information that is available that can at least help decrease the anxiety significantly. The earlier you start thinking of this stuff, the more time you have to answer some of your most pressing and anxiety-provoking questions. You kind of want to have some of these questions answered and kind of like have a specific mindset already in place before you're in a race against time, like literally a race against time, especially if you're already pregnant and just now starting to kind of figure this stuff out. I know from personal experience, and it was absolutely no fun. Today, I'm going to be going down a list of some of my immediate questions that I had when I found out that I was pregnant. Again, I had to go through all of this once I was already pregnant. My hope is that someone out there is listening and maybe you are just thinking about it. And so you're going to have some time to kind of work through this stuff before you even put that baby in your belly. All right, question number 1. It's a big one. Am I really pregnant? I mean, this is a really good place to start. This was something that I asked immediately because I was definitely in a state of disbelief. The first time that I got pregnant, it actually resulted in a loss But when we got pregnant, we weren't necessarily trying. It was kind of like a heat of the moment, like passionate night. I knew exactly when it happened. And so I had never been pregnant before. And I just didn't believe it when I saw those two lines. So my advice would be to number one, check in with yourself. Um, do you feel like there were any symptoms that were present when you took the test? Was there something that drove you to say, I think I'm pregnant? I know a big one and the most important one is a missed period, right? You're going to miss your period if you are pregnant because that egg was fertilized. And so your body is not shedding anything. It is preparing to nurture and grow the baby. Something else that you may notice early on may be a little bit of fatigue. It could be some nausea. For me, my boobs got really big really fast. And it was one of my first signs that Shane and I noticed. Something else that happens to me almost immediately is that my vision changes. In fact, with my third baby, my son, that was the immediate indicator for me. I wear glasses typically, but I don't have like a strong prescription or anything like that. But I was noticing that there was a lot of tension in my eyes and I was having to kind of squint and make the font bigger on most things that I was reading, like on my phone. It's one of those weird symptoms that most people have no clue happens, but it was one of my very first symptoms this time around. And besides those really early pregnancy symptoms and signs, you can always just take a second test. I know a lot of women do that. You can always just take another test to make sure that that first one was accurate. And, if you have another set of lines or if you have the digital one that says pregnant, well, then you can probably bet that you probably are pregnant. The last thing you can do is go to the doctor. If you feel like there's some reason why you may not be pregnant, maybe you were taking a specific medication or something like that, then you can always check in with your doctor. They tend to do the same kind of urine test initially, but if there was some reason why they are doubting it or you are doubting it, then they can definitely do a blood test, and that one is going to be much more accurate than the urine test. All right, question number 2 is, what do I do now? I think I'm having a lot of fun with this because when I was thinking of the questions, I literally put myself in that moment with the very first baby and the very first pregnancy test. And then the days, following that positive test. And yeah, that was my second question. What am I going to do now? I know that I'm probably pregnant. The dates line up, everything else lines up, but I didn't know what you do after that. So what I'm going to say in hindsight is that number one, you should savor the moment. You just found out that you're pregnant, probably for the first time ever in your life. You are carrying a soul. You're carrying a life inside of you. Your body is going to grow a baby, a human, your human that is half of you and half of the person that you love. So number one is treat yourself. Obviously tell your partner and celebrate in whatever way that you guys see fit, because the first thing that you need to do is just honor the fact that God chose you to bring a life into this world. And that is so, so, so special. The next thing I would recommend is to do what I would call a body check. Just kind of think about the things that you have been eating, if there are specific medications that you have been taking, the products that you use. You just want to check in and make sure that those things are going to be agreeable during your pregnancy. Obviously, the number one thing is do no harm. So if there's anything that you have been doing that you already know is not good for your health, whether it be smoking or drinking or anything like that, then you want to stop that immediately as soon as you find out. And actually, since I'm talking to some women who probably aren't pregnant yet, it's probably a good idea if you are trying to conceive to start to cut that stuff out now. So if there's something that you know is obviously bad for you, then try to start cutting that stuff out now because it's only going to help with just the overall health of your body. But also, there's going to be so many changes and so many decisions that are going on once you are pregnant. You don't want to be spending the time of like cutting out a bad habit at the same time. So I'm thinking in terms of if you're a smoker, right? Well, there's going to be like withdrawals and things that come up with that. And so if you know that you're wanting to have a baby or you're even doing things that can make a baby, I would recommend trying to cut down on those habits beforehand because it's going to be so much harder when you are already pregnant. Similarly, if there are products that you use, which I know there are, because if you're a woman, there's a ton. So like shampoos, face products, nails, I'm just perfumes, makeup. Check those things now. If you're not pregnant, check out the ingredients that are in some of your products now. And you can always just kind of Google, a list of them and just kind of check out which ones are agreeable with pregnancy and which ones are not. One of the things that I remember when I found out that I was pregnant that I was using was the retinol, like I think it's like vitamin A or something like that. It's a skin product and it was for kind of like clearing up my skin. Those are not safe to use during pregnancy. Similarly, there are other acne type products that are not good to use while pregnant either. So there are lists on the internet somewhere, I'm sure. You can kind of look and see which ones are safe and which ones aren't. And just kind of start trying to cut out those things now and finding some natural, less harsh alternatives. One of the things that I prided myself on with my son, who is, my third baby, was that I had already kind of cut out everything that was not really good for me, as far as like products and things before he was even conceived. And so by the time I got pregnant, there was nothing really that I had to change. And that's just so much easier. Like, this is not me bragging or anything. It's just kind of like a nice convenience to have that I didn't need to really stop doing anything that I was doing when I found out I was pregnant. It was kind of just business as usual. Nutrition is another big one that can absolutely be targeted and addressed before you even become pregnant. This is just something that you should think about, like overall, just for overall health, just considering the types of foods that you're eating, the drinks that you're drinking, everything that you consume is contributing to your overall health. And that's going to be especially true when you become pregnant, when you're carrying your baby. I'm going to kind of shy away from the prenatal talk. I personally did not take any prenatal vitamins. That was based off of my personal research. I'm happy to talk to anyone if you're interested in talking about that, but I'm not going to tell you one way or another. I would just recommend doing the research on whatever specific prenatal vitamin that you pick. Okay, so the next question is, who should I tell? And this was one, obviously I knew that I was going to tell my partner. That was obvious. There are different ways that women like to tell their partners. So I know, like, on the internet, there's all these different surprises and cute ways. And so you can decide, like, you can kind of be thinking about maybe if you'd like to do something like that. So as far as beyond the partner, this is a hot topic, and I think I have a nuanced view on it. So there's this idea of like the secret trimester, and that basically is like the first trimester where women don't tell anyone, outside of maybe their immediate inner circle. So 1 in 5 women will experience a miscarriage. And I think it's somewhere around 90 to like 95% of those miscarriages happen within the first trimester. So because of that, a lot of women will hesitate and keep their pregnancies a secret until they're kind of out of that window. And so you'll see most of the pregnancy announcements happening when they reach second trimester. I have a complicated view on this, and I think it's because I did experience a miscarriage in the first trimester with my first baby. I lost that baby at 6 weeks. And what I will say in hindsight, of course, is that I was keeping it a secret. And unfortunately, when I had the miscarriage, a couple of things happened. Number one is that I had to both explain the fact that I was pregnant and that I lost the baby all in one sitting to most people. This was especially true at work because when I had the miscarriage, I couldn't come to work and I had to give a medical reason why I was missing so many days. And then I had to explain to the principal and my other coworkers that I was pregnant, but I lost the baby. And it just felt horrible. Let me know if there are any of you out there who have also experienced this, because I realized that in keeping the secret, it really didn't change anything when I lost the baby, that I still lost my baby. And this is something that maybe I feel like some women don't necessarily agree with this. I do know of several women who had miscarriages, like several miscarriages actually in the first trimester, and they're still totally fine with keeping the secret, with other subsequent babies, especially the ones that they brought to term. And so there must be some comfort in not telling people. But when it came to the next time around, I was like, I'm just going to tell people right away. And, if I lose this baby, then I get to have everyone know that I lost the baby and that they can help me in my grieving process and also just let me know, like, hey, I'm here for you. Because, like, think about it. If you had a child that was on the earth and, you brought them through birth and now they're here with us, and then you lost that child, would you want to keep it a secret? Or would you want everyone to know and then be there for you and be there with you? These children, in my mind, whether they're, 6 weeks along in pregnancy or they're fully formed, they're still my children. And I want everyone to help me grieve them. But that's just me. And I know everyone is different. So this is a thought that you might want to consider is, who should you tell and when should you tell them? And, just kind of think about those things. It's a very nuanced decision and there is no right or wrong answer. You might be saying, Destynie, you're crazy. I'm still not telling anyone. I don't care what you say. And that's totally fine. I just want to help you consider all of the things, and I'm okay with whatever decision that you make for your baby, your family, and your body. Okay, so this next one kind of goes along with who should I tell? And it's, do I need to go to the doctor? And this is something that you can be thinking about absolutely before you even get to this point. Because if you are, going to the doctor every year, kind of like for your annual visits with an OB or a gynecologist, then you already kind of have someone in mind that you might want to go see when you find out that you're pregnant. And so if this is the case and you already have someone in mind and you're already going to go see them before you're pregnant, you can be asking them questions kind of about how they run their practice, how they deal with pregnant women, what do their births look like. You can be asking them all of that stuff before you even get pregnant and start to go through like the maternity side of things. Something that I want you to keep in mind is that you don't have to stay with your current provider. Even if this doctor has been with you since you were 15 years old, you don't have to stay with them for your pregnancy. This is a very different ball game, and it's something to really, really think about. You don't have to do what they say. So if you do choose to go with them, you don't have to do everything that they say to do. What do I mean by that? So there are a bunch of tests and a bunch of things that go on in the beginning of pregnancy. There are ultrasounds and there are blood tests and all kinds of things that they recommend. And throughout this entire process, you absolutely have the right to research things, to hear their recommendations, to sit on it and talk to your partner and read up on it and think about it before going forward with anything. This is a really good practice for when you have children and you have to make all of the decisions for your children. You want to make sure that everything that you do is not because someone told you to do it, but because you feel good about that decision. I believe that Mama Natural actually has a list on her website, which gives you a bunch of questions that you can ask your provider. And I would definitely recommend, if you can't find something like that, to just kind of think of questions that you have on your own and write them down so that when you go to the provider that you are ready to ask them. I personally chose a midwife the second time around. As I said, the first baby ended at 6 weeks. So with my daughter, the second child, I chose a midwife, and every time I would go to her, I would have a list of questions that kind of just popped into my brain, like as I was going through my life in between visits. Again, you can ask those questions even before you're pregnant. These people work with pregnant women all the time. They should be able to answer it. And because I mentioned midwife, that's absolutely an option for you as well. So I said, do you need to go to the doctor? The answer is yes and no. It depends on whether you want to go to the doctor or not. If you are thinking that you might want a different birth that is maybe outside of a hospital, for example, then a doctor is not going to come out of the hospital. So you're going to have to look into a midwife. There are midwives that go into the hospital, but not vice versa. So if you're thinking about maybe an alternative setting like a birth center or a home birth, then you're probably going to be looking for a midwife. So be on the lookout for any of those in your area. But if you're choosing a hospital birth, you can still decide between a midwife and a doctor. So that's also something that you can be thinking about even before you get pregnant. So probably the biggest question that I had personally was what was going to happen to my body? Now, the answer is that it varies widely depending on each woman. And for me, I already kind of told you guys about some of the symptoms that I have. I get really bad morning sickness in the beginning of pregnancy, as well as some of those other strange changes like the vision changes and things like that. Over the course of time, as the baby grows inside of me, I have a very short torso. And so my babies grow out. There is not enough room. I don't have any wide hips or anything like that. So I tend to have what my coworkers named the torpedo belly, because it literally just looks like the baby's going to fall off at the end. But that's not the case for everyone. And I know in the beginning, when I was newly pregnant, I was in the best shape of my life. I was actually trying out to be a Texans cheerleader. I had been extremely fit my entire life. And one of the things that haunted me, and again, I'm kind of ashamed to admit it now, but I'm telling my truth, and that's why you're here. So my mother had some pretty significant stretch marks, and I was always told that it was a genetic thing. And so I was very, very concerned about stretch marks, and I kind of knew that I had a pretty short torso, and I just guessed that I was going to have this giant belly and my skin was going to be irreparably damaged. And that was going to be the end of like who I was as a person. And so I spent a lot of time really thinking about what I was going to look like. And I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the overall transformation that was going to happen. Like, I don't know if that's the case for every woman, but I do feel like it is a common thing. I think I see a lot of women talking about like losing their body or gaining their body back when pregnancy is over. So I do feel like it's kind of a universal concern, even if it's not a big one for certain people. So here's a pro tip, and it's something that I think if you hear nothing else today in this podcast, this is something that I really, really hope you guys listen to and really think about. Get comfortable with the idea of coming out of this a different person than when you started. And what I mean by that is you're not going to have the same exact body that you had before you got pregnant. Even the women who snap back and even the ones who have zero stretch marks, the internal organs have changed. The abs have changed. The hips have widened. Sometimes their feet grow. Sometimes their hair color changes. There's so many things that happen, even when on the outside it looks like everything has stayed essentially the same. So get comfortable with change. Try to shift your mindset to care for your body through all of its changes. And this is important to try to get in that mindset before you even become pregnant, because change is coming once you know that you're pregnant, and it's going to be rapid change. It is both a long 10 months and a short 10 months. For you to grow an entire person inside of your body within 10 months or 40 weeks is a drastic change. Your body has never experienced that before. So how can you do this? One of my recommendations would be to practice getting in tune with your body. You want to be able to increase your ability to identify when something is wrong with you. And the way that you do that is by just identifying the common themes of your body. Notice how you feel when you eat certain things. Notice how you feel when you get a certain amount of sleep, how you feel when you exercise, when you don't exercise. Just start to pay attention to all of the fluctuations that occur when you're just living your normal daily routine. And then from there, you'll be able to pay attention to when there are changes that are not kind of like expected. So for example, if you're getting sick or something like that, you might notice that over the course of time, the more in tune with your body you are, the quicker you might notice that, something different is happening. This is going to be incredibly important because when you are pregnant, you want to be able to notice subtle changes. You never know when something might come up where maybe something's wrong with you or something's wrong with the baby, or it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's wrong, but it's just something different that you might want to notice. Like perhaps over the course of time, you might notice that your baby has flipped from being upright to head down, and that might be an exciting change. This will also help you identify your needs when you're going through birth. This is really, really important, guys. If you haven't listened to the first episode where I talk about birth fears specifically, definitely go back and listen to that episode. But you want to be able to advocate for yourself when you're going through labor. You want to be able to identify the stages that you're experiencing. You want to be able to advocate for yourself to other medical professionals when maybe they are suggesting something that you're not comfortable with, or maybe you don't think you need at present. All of the intuition that you're building during this time is going to play out later. And going along with that, you want to be able to notice changes in yourself postpartum. We only get a 6-week checkup by midwives or doctors typically in America. And there's nothing usually after that unless you schedule it. And so us women are pretty much responsible for checking in on ourselves and making sure that we are healing appropriately after we have the baby. I would love to see more postpartum care happening. I know some midwives are doing a better job with that now and offering more appointments. You might get a couple of days, a check-in, and then a couple of weeks, and then the final one somewhere around 6 weeks. So a little bit more of a check-in. But then after that 6-week mark, there tends to be nothing across the board. And lastly, when you have your baby home with you and you're taking care of them, they can't speak. They can only cry. There are no other ways for them to communicate besides crying or whimpering and things like that. And so the better in tune with your body you are, the better practice you have for reading subtle cues in your newborn. I noticed a very big difference between the first time postpartum with my daughter versus with my son. And I honestly feel like I was much more in tune with myself with my son's pregnancy. And I think it came from a lot of practice and trial and error after my daughter's birth and the struggles that I had postpartum with her. But I was much more in tune with my body throughout my son's pregnancy, so much so that I honestly never felt like I lost my body and had to get it back. Like there was just this nice slow progression between not being pregnant and then conceiving and then going through the trimesters and then giving birth and then postpartum. And I was never feeling like my body was not mine. It was just my body experiencing changes. And when I had him and then, got my body back, it was a different body, but it didn't feel foreign to me at all. It was just a progression of, what happens when you give birth. I didn't feel like this. I didn't feel this need to find myself again or to kind of grieve the old body the way that I did with my daughter. It was just kind of like, okay, this is who I am now, or this is what I look like now. And I was also aware of the fact that even after all of these things happened to me through the pregnancy, I know that recovery takes a long time. And so I may not look like who I'm permanently going to look like for several years after the baby is here. All right, ladies, that's all I have for you today. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it was not overwhelming. I'm trying to ease overwhelm, and I hope that I did that today. Definitely let me know what you guys are thinking. I always leave a Q&A with the episodes on Spotify, so definitely go there and give me some feedback. You can also find me on the social medias. I'm on Instagram, Blossoming Mama 12, the same handle on Facebook. I'm also on YouTube, The Blossoming Mama. And so you guys can reach me in any of those ways. And yeah, I look forward to getting some feedback and hearing how things are going. And for now, depending on when you're listening to this, I hope you have a great day or a great evening. And I'll see you all in the next one.